This video, we're going to be talking about President Trump. Now, I'm not going to like fucking bash Trump, like him as a person or whatever. We're going to be talking about something that's probably around 2 weeks old at this point, so it's a little old, but I wanted to talk about it a lot. And it's going to be about his executive order for social media platforms. So basically what the executive order does is it makes social media platforms, like Twitter or Facebook, it makes them liable for things that their users post. So like if it's false information, then you can sue the company for like perpetuating false information. And funnily enough, the reason Donald Trump decided to make this executive order was in response to Twitter fact-checking two of his tweets talking about voter fraud, because Twitter and those social media companies are trying to like make it very apparent when facts might not be accurate and to give you sources so that you can stay informed. Like this happens on TikTok, this happens on Instagram, So this is something they did to Trump, and Trump was not fucking happy about that. He was pissed about it, which is why he did this executive order. And the thing is that he's saying that they were censoring him, but they weren't censoring him. They just put a little thing at the bottom that said, this fact might not be accurate or whatever, like about mail-in voting, because he was talking about voter fraud and that type of shit. Anyways, they didn't even delete the tweets. They just said that it might not be accurate. So it's not even fucking censorship. And basically what this executive order is doing is it's spitting in the face of the Communication Decency Act, specifically Section 230, because that's the section that makes it so that companies are not like seen as publishers, they're seen as distributors. So it's not like editorialized or their own opinions. So they can't be actually like directly sued for stuff that is published on their platform. But the issue that President Trump specifically mentions in the executive order is that he argues social media is more editorialized and is no longer a neutral platform because Twitter said that you might want to fact check his goddamn voter fraud tweets. He literally equates this to a phone company editing your phone conversations. Now let's just think about this analogy real quick. All right, so Twitter is a public platform that anyone can use and anyone can see any tweets that are not private. And Donald Trump's Twitter account is not a private account, it is a public account, so anyone can see the tweets. Now, this means that he is basically talking in a public forum. Okay? A phone company would be breaking your privacy by one, listening to your fucking conversations, and two, they would be editing what you are saying of private conversations that they shouldn't be allowed to see it. So this is an issue of privacy, for one, is that Twitter is public, so it's different than like a phone company changing your shit. That makes sense, right? I think that makes sense. Anyways, I want to talk about the immediate ramification that this had for Trump before I talk about some of the more broad aspects of it. And it's a pretty infamous tweet at this point. It will probably live in infamy through history when we look back on the current protesting and riots over the fucking death of George Floyd, which I've talked about. And it is this tweet. I'm going to read it out for you guys. "These thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty, and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you." Twitter's response when they saw this tweet was to hide it from their users, but they didn't delete it, despite the fact that it broke Twitter's rules for glorifying violence, because he says when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Twitter did not delete the tweet because Donald Trump is our fucking president, and so they don't want to censor him, but they also don't want to get sued based on the executive order that literally passed, that Trump made 2 days prior, that says that they're now liable for shit that's posted on it. So they hid the tweet because they don't want to get fucking sued, but they said, look, all right, we can't delete the tweet because Donald Trump is such a large presence and an important voice to be able to hear, and Twitter is one of his main aspects of talking to the public, that we can't delete it, just based on how he is, how big he is as a public figure, since he's the president of a goddamn country. But we're gonna mention that this breaks our fucking terms of service, so we were hiding it. So you must consciously click on this to see what he tweeted. Okay? I'm not really going to go into the tweet itself, except for something that Ethan from H3H3 said, which is, when the fuck did theft become punishable by death in this country?
When did the punishment for theft become death? What country is this?
Okay, and one other aspect of the executive order I want to mention is that Trump also cites that Twitter is not neutral because a lot of conservative information or accounts are being censored by them, either fact-checked or, I don't know, tweets deleted maybe. I'm not entirely sure about where he's coming from for this, but basically I think it's mostly the fact-checking, and he thinks that Twitter has a liberal bias, which I'm not going to really argue with at this point. I'm just going to state very general things. I'm not going to try and defend Twitter or whatever. It has a liberal bias, and that hurts conservative accounts. And really the only thing I'm going to say about that is think about why a lot of information that conservatives give are getting fact-checked, and a lot of the information that Democrats are giving allegedly are not getting fact-checked. It could be that there's a liberal bias. I'm not going to say that there's not. Or it could be that a lot of conservative arguing points or stuff that they tweet about might not be factually accurate, and Twitter is trying to inform the public. I know we're so into tribalism that your opinion can't possibly be wrong, but that's definitely something to think about. Anyways, my big issue with this is that it essentially encourages censorship. Trump is encouraging censorship by this, and I personally think that places like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are too big of platforms to be censoring people, to be having honestly, I don't think that these platforms should no longer be considered under the rules of a private company where they are able to choose their rules. They can delete users if they want because it's their own private company. I think they're too ingrained in society at this point, especially when a lot of the information that the public gets from our goddamn president comes from Twitter. I think they're too important to the daily lives of people where it should be considered a public forum, and free speech should be enforced all times, which means anyone can say whatever. Look, okay, my opinion on free speech is that I do not believe in censoring certain speeches. I think hate speech is totally okay to be said. There are ramifications of saying hate speech, and someone contacts your college or something and you get fucking expelled or some shit. That I'm totally okay with. If you say something, that does not free you from the consequences of what you say. But I believe that hate speech and all this other type of speech, pedophiles having a voice to speak on Twitter and stuff, I think that's all totally okay because they should have a platform. They should be defended under free speech for whatever the fuck they say. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't receive consequences. I'm just saying they should be able to have a platform to speak. And I think Twitter should stop being considered as a private company and being able to make their own rules. And I think that it should be considered a public forum, and that most things that are said on it should not be deleted unless it is a call to action. This Donald Trump tweet, I feel, might be a call to action because he says, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Okay, I could see Twitter deleting that. But otherwise, I do not think that that social media should be censoring people. And I feel like Donald Trump definitely thinks that too, because he thinks that fucking not deleting his tweet and calling it factually incorrect is censorship. But what he's doing, this executive order, which by the way, I've read some articles about it and I've watched some videos, and there apparently seems to be no legal basis for this. It will be turned over when it's brought to a court, but it's probably going to take some time for that to do that. So in the meantime, it's going to be acted as if it's a real thing, which can legitimately affect social media, which it already has since Twitter has fucking hid his goddamn looting starts, shooting starts comment. Trump is pushing social media to become more censored, and that is so not fucking good for everyone because it just encourages more times for conservatives like Milo Yiannopoulos, who about 4 years ago was deleted off of Twitter because he said some hate speech or considered hate speech or whatever. Anyways, he was deleted off Twitter because Twitter didn't agree with what he was saying, so he was deleted. This type of stuff like that is going to happen more and more often now because Trump made this goddamn executive order where it says that companies can be held liable for shit that people say on their platform, and that's just not gonna fucking help goddamn free speech. He's literally encouraging censorship, And he's too stupid to fucking see that. His head is too far up his goddamn ass about his ego and being like, Twitter said that I gotta get fact checked. He was too fucking concerned with his own goddamn ego that he doesn't see that he's literally working against his own goddamn, his own fucking, like, reason for the executive order to be against censorship. Like, it's not surprising that he's like, his ego is too far, like, it's too large for him to realize that he's encouraging censorship by this. And I think that's just so stupid. And I watched one video that was an interview with a early Facebook investor. And I think he was basically, I'll link the video in the description. I think he was basically saying that he agrees with the executive order, not exactly why Trump did it, but he agrees with it because misinformation is being spread, is being amplified on social media like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter about like, oh, coronavirus isn't really a big deal. Like that type of misinformation is being spread too much, and that's why we need to hold companies liable. I don't agree with that at all. I think that people like 13, you have to be 13 enough to use most of these fucking sites. YouTube Kids doesn't let you see this type of shit, so I'm gonna just say 13, okay? You have to be 13 years old to use these fucking sites, okay? I think that people should be held more accountable for themselves. They should be able, especially fucking adults, which is the biggest, like, issue, is that adults believe this shit, okay? They should be held accountable for fact-checking for themselves. You're a fucking adult. You can look up if something that the president says is accurate or not. You can look up if something someone says is accurate or not. You can look up if some shit that's reposted all over fucking Facebook is accurate or not, okay? It's not the goddamn company's responsibility to fucking baby you. Think for yourself like a goddamn human being and search shit on your own. Don't just find the whatever fucking like bullshit is on Twitter or Facebook and be like, okay, this looks good enough and it works with my own narrative that I believe in. I'm just gonna go with it. Like, do not fucking do that. Look into things for yourself, which is one of the biggest issues with politics in this country, is that people are so blind to it. And I'm not gonna say that I'm not. Like, I will see shit and not look into it that much because I agree with it or because I'm okay with the aspect of it. Like, I need to do my own research more too. But a lot of people do not want to hold accountability for fake news because they don't want to do the goddamn research and fact check. And they're blaming it on these goddamn social media companies who I don't think should be liable for this. I do not think that Instagram has to fucking say fact checked COVID-19 issues or whatever. They don't have to do that. There is no reason for them to be doing that. I think it's fine if they do it, you know, saying you should fact check something that encourages it. But I in no way believe that these social media platforms should be required to and pushed to by the public because you're fucking adults, all right? Act like it. Look up shit for yourself. Don't just blame it on a big fucking corporation because you're too fucking lazy or too stupid to figure out what the fuck is going on and think for yourself like a goddamn adult. Okay, so I guess in conclusion, this executive order is not going to last very long. It's going to go through the courts. It's going to be nixed, and it's going to be back to normal. I can see this definitely having a long-term effect on social media platforms for the foreseeable future, for sure, because they don't want to get fucked by lawsuits. Because President Donald Trump made an executive order against censorship by increasing censorship, by encouraging censorship. I think Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, I think all those platforms should be considered a public forum and should allow things like hate speech and accounts like Milo Yiannopoulos to stay up and like be unregulated, because I believe in free speech and I believe in the right to say hateful shit all the time, because I also think it makes it apparent that someone's fucking stupid or that they're racist or shit. And don't you want to know when motherfuckers are racist so you can like I know the mob loves canceling people. Like, if censorship increases, you don't have anyone to cancel and you can't find all the racists as easily because Twitter is censoring their hate speech. Anyway, that's besides the point. I think that it should be considered a public forum and all types of speech should be allowed except for calls to action, because that shit is how people get fucking hurt. Okay? So yeah, this executive order is fucking stupid. I hope you guys are staying safe out there with all the protests and shit going on. Take it easy. And fuck rapist Brock Turner.